Let's see, good morning. I have moved things again. This time I was very careful. My desk was over here, and I've moved the desk is still here, but I moved the two monitors that were here over here. I think that gives me a better view with the camera. I see one little thing, and I don't want to switch it, so I'm just going to deal with it, and that's this monitor is, when I'm making videos, this monitor is the one that has the Manicam control panel on it, and over here is, you know, what you see. So anyway, I'm not going to mess with it anymore, at least today. But I moved everything, well, not everything. The computer is right here, and that's where it was before. When I was sitting here, it was, you know, right here. I do have the printer on the other side of the computer, and since this area is very vacant with nothing on it except there is that lamp, I think I'll probably move the printer down here. The audio seems to be working okay. The video seems to be working okay. Everything appears to be in sync. So I don't think I've messed up anything yet. I use a lot of ties because I like the cables running, you know, straight. I like them not hanging out. So I, you know, and I use up a lot of the in fact, I've used up all of my see, I can't remember where the camera is. Oh, here it is. I've used up, let me go here. I've used up a lot of my long ties. No, you know, and so I've got some ordered that are coming today, but I'm doing the same thing I did with this and getting an assortment of them. Let's see. I'll put the link below. Zip ties, 700 pack. There are 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch. Heavy duty. And $16 for it. And you know, I got next day delivery. I'll put the link below. Wait a minute, let me show you this. Let's see. Next time I order, I'll probably order just long ones or something. You know, right now, because this is, you know, of course I'm getting delivered today, this sort of upsets me. That I look down and I see, you know, cables just laying on the floor. So when I get the ties in, I can then secure them. The reason I use so many ties is because I'm always moving stuff around. And I should have invested in ties on the stock market or whatever. I actually was in the stock market, of course. I mean, when I got out of high school, I put money. That's before computers, you know. or at least that people could afford. And I invested in, I went through Merrill Lynch, Finner, and Smith. And they seemed like they were the ones to go, go through. I forget what it was, so I may be wrong on this. Maybe somebody's old like me and remembers. I think I paid like 6 or 7% when I purchased the stock. And then when I sold the stock, I paid the same. I think you can see where this is going. I was buying nuclear stock. United Nuclear and was the other Western? Can't remember now. And I did all the just notebook and graph pad. I did all that by hand without computers. But then I had a feeling after purchasing, and of course I couldn't purchase a lot. I mean, yet in order to get the discount, in order to get it at something less than 6 or 7% or whatever the hell it was, you had to purchase in round lots, which is 100 shares. And I could never buy 100 shares at one time. But then someplace down the line, after a few years, I thought, I think, this nuclear stock, power plants and whatever, and I think there may be an accident or something, and that would be bad for the price of nuclear stocks, I think what it was actually mining companies, who were taking uranium or whatever it is that's in the ground out in order to make uranium and stuff. So I sold all the stock, and I actually made money. Not a lot, but I was okay, except I hated that idea of, because I paid 7% or 6% to get in, and when I sold it, then it was the same thing. But then right after I did that, there was the nuclear plant here in the United States. Can't remember the name of it. That had the problem, and nuclear stocks went way down. So I just happened to get out at the right time. By the way, no, I'm not even going to tell you. No, I've told you before anyway. Well, I'll tell you again. If you live in the United States, maybe the rest of the world, I don't know. If you want to invest in something, I'm sort of kidding about this, except it's true. Don't buy mutual funds. Don't buy, oh, by the way, I did buy a mutual fund when I was buying my nuclear stock. And there I fell down on the one thing, even back then, that they told you is don't buy a fund where you pay the commission for the salesperson or whatever, because I forget what that was. So whatever amount of that I was going to buy, I paid up front, which makes me totally stupid, but a lot of other people did it too. You paid the entire commission instead of as you bought it, paying a little bit. So the salesman or whatever, he got his money up front, and that was not a wise investment. But anyway, what I was going to say was the price of guns, especially, well, I think probably all but handguns, because that's what I was dealing with. I worked 30 years hospital security, and I was armed with a revolver, well, at the last with a auto Smith & Wesson 40 caliber there at the last few years. But the price of handguns, it was ridiculous. So if you want to invest in something, but don't have them laying around your house, put them in a bank and lock them up so you don't. There was a guy the other day, he was on the news. He was having a dream that his house was being broken into, and he was dreaming. So he grabbed his .357 revolver and shot himself in the leg. Then he woke up, I guess. He didn't kill himself, but he could have hit the femoral artery or something. That'd have been it. That would have been it. Because there's just too many stupid people with guns, And part of it is that they want to show them off. Oh, there was a guy recently that, what did he do? His gun went off accidentally. Oh, he was in a restaurant. And other people were in the restaurant. And for some reason, I don't know if he's going for his billfold or what he's going for, but he shot a couple people, except I think one of them, at least one of them was shot by, the round hit concrete or whatever the material was on the floor or whatever, and came up and hit a person. And then the other person, I think, was actually hit by the bullet, but it wasn't. But he took off running, and I think he turned himself in later. He ran. And, this happens a lot. I know here in Fort Worth, Texas, there was a guy at a Walmart in line to get out, to pay his bill and get out, probably buying more ammunition or something. But he reached for his billfold that was in his back pocket, and the concealed weapon that he was carrying, went off, and the bullets there again, hit the floor, and little pieces of concrete or whatever Walmart's floor is made out came and hit a lady and a child. Neither one of them was, neither one of them was hurt bad. So, if you can. I had a friend, I've mentioned him before, and he collected guns. He was a hospital security officer, and he collected a lot of guns. He had, just picture, about the biggest, what do you call them, chest of drawers, or they were big, it was, like there was like 4 drawers, I think, or 5, and they were like this tall. And this was his, because I had to work in plain clothes, and all I had was for the police department. For years I was a reserve police officer, and they wanted me in, it was an event outside with I don't know what all going on, and it was summer, it was hot weather, really hot weather, and all I had was Smith & Wesson, 4-inch barrel. So I called up my friend and said, if you got a snub nose I could borrow, I've got, he said, sure, Jim, come on over. So when I went over, I knew he collected guns, but I didn't have any idea. When I went over, he said, well, what do you need? And I said, well, what have you got? And then he opened up these drawers filled with guns. So he did better, I'm sure, and of course it didn't do him any good. But his investment in those guns was more than he'd have got putting into the stock market or, anything else. I had worked with him at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, and he had worked there for several years when I went to work there. And he was midnight shift supervisor. I hired in on the day shift, of course, and then later I went as supervisor on the second shift. And then eventually after several years, I went back to the day shift just as a security officer. Being a supervisor didn't mean anything to me, but it did to him and to a bunch of other people. And then eventually I became the supervisor on the day shift. But I probably was about the only friend that Lloyd Akins had. The guys on as he supervised the midnight shift, and he was kind of an asshole as a supervisor. And, you know, I picked him up, and he came out one time and had dinner with my family and me, and he liked me, but he just had an attitude. The hospital that we were working at, had signs put up, no smoking. And I came into work and there was signs that had been put up, no smoking, And then when he came on duty or whatever, on the midnight shift, he said, "You're the one that put those signs up," because they shouldn't have been smoking anyway, really. Common sense should have told them not to smoke in the waiting room, in the area where new patients came in to be checked in. Of course, at night there wasn't anybody, but those guys smoked there, big time. The midnight shift did, big time, sitting there. And that was, they should have just known. But I had nothing to do with it. But he insisted that I did. He went to the director of security. The director of security said, "No." He said, director of security, he loved being, going around. He put the signs up, And Lloyd, and I told Lloyd, "No, I didn't do it. I didn't have anything to do with it," And, a year or two later, when he was mad at me over something, and it was a meeting of just the supervisor with the director of security, and it was the three other supervisors they'd got together, and Lloyd Akins was, and you put and Mr. Ross, the director of security, actually Mr. Ross he started pounding. Actually, we were in a small room, and in the next room were all the security officers who were waiting for us to finish our little thing, and the director of security was pounding on the wall, God damn it, Jim Howard had nothing to do with it, And, and then, of course, one time I made a mistake, which I shouldn't have. I did things, changed things. Well, you know how I like to change things. I changed things at the hospital, too. And one of the things, at about 11 o'clock at night or whatever, automatically a switch was switched. And then if anybody exited a fire exit door or any exit door, an alarm would ring at the switchboard operator. Then she'd call security. I forget what the code, what the thing was. Let's say 1013. She'd say 1013, and it would be like the northeast door on the south building, something that was like. And so when I started there, Lloyd had been working, and I guess I didn't even notice it until I went over where I worked the second shift, and I'd say, because the second shift was just there for like an hour or something like that, when the thing, then the midnight shift showed up. And I'd say, "Lloyd, which," and he'd worked there for years, "What door is that?" He said, "I don't know." So, of course, I was back on the day shift. Later when I went back on the day shift, I was looking around for something to do, and So then I went to the director of security and I said, "The door alarms when they go off and that, whatever." And I said, "Can I organize that?" And he said, "Yeah." So then I set it up, easily, so a person would know. At the administrative offices, the first, on the ground floor, the front of the building, there was an exit there, door 10, first floor, starting from that area. And then the next door would be door 11, and then as you go around, on this first floor exit, on would be like 20, and, so got it all figured out. And usually I got my ducks in line and stuff like that. And for that time, I don't know why because that was not like me to not, I took care of things. So then, I was still second shift supervisor then, because I was there, and then Lloyd came in to go to work, and he was friendly, and I came up, and he was, getting ready to go to work, and I was getting ready to go off duty, and then the operator called, 1013, door 20, and then it hit me. Oh shit! I knew what was going to happen, and Lloyd said, "What's that?" And I said, "Lloyd, God damn it, I forgot. I meant to tell you. I meant to check with you and tell you, but I changed the things, and now." And oh man, he didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks. Now, in a way, since he was supervisor and since that was on, I should have, and I usually did clear all this kind of stuff with everybody and everybody. And he didn't speak to me for a couple of weeks. I don't think he had anybody he could talk to for a couple of weeks. But, anyway, he collected guns. Said he was going to retire at age 50. He collected pennies, too. If anybody at the hospital had pennies, he'd give them, and he... finally, Lloyd quit, and he'd worked there for years, and he went to Research Medical Center to work. Because of me, and because he was mad at the director of security for standing up for me. Although, if I would have been the director of security in that case, they were also all three of the supervisors when we had that meeting. Lloyd was yelling about the no smoking signs, but the other two and all three together were, how come Jim Howard is always in charge? When the director of security was on vacation, there was a lieutenant, by the way. But how come Jim Howard is always in charge when, and they were just going on and on about that, and the director of security was pounding on the wall about shit. And then I thought if I were the director of security, I would have put I would have put an end to the thing. I would have just said, well, because he's got common sense or whatever, whatever. I'd have just said, if you don't like it, hit the door, And of course, Lloyd did, I don't know, months later or something, he did quit and go to Research Medical Center and worked over there. Oh, anyway, he always said that when he turned 50, he was going to retire. By the way, he called. That's how the. No. He never had a car. He lived real close to, Trinity Hospital. He'd walk to work. But anyway, he went through Research, and so then, and of course he was working there, and I was still working at Trinity. And he called me and said, "Jim, could you do me a favor?" And I said, "Sure, Lloyd. What do you need? Anything?" And he said, "Well, I want to deposit some of these pennies in the bank, and could you come out and drive me over there?" And I didn't say it. I didn't, I said, "The bank across the street?" And he said, "Yeah." I thought, what, So I went there. His entire living room was filled with pennies and, in bags. Everywhere there were pennies in bags. He'd rolled them in penny wrappers. And so we loaded them in my car. I think I had a Volkswagen Rabbit. When we put him in my car, the car actually went down, Drove across the street. He took him in the bank. I went with him, of course. And they said, "No, we don't, we don't accept pennies, or maybe any coin, in wrappers." They had to drop it, so they broke all of those things that he had done all that time. They had been wrapping them, and then dumped them in the thing. And then they came back, and I forget, it was hundreds of dollars. He came back and said, "Okay, that'll be," and he said, "Okay." And then I said, "What's wrong, Lloyd?" He said, "Why?" And I forget what he said, It was like 150 or something more. And I said, "You better tell him." And he said, No, that's okay." And I said, "You better tell him." "No, that's okay." So then a few days later, maybe a week later, I get a call from Lloyd. He said, Jim, could you do me a favor? I need to take some pennies over to the bank. I said, okay, I'll be there. I went out there, and his living room had been so full of pennies, they'd end up being stacked behind a sofa. So we took those, and that was the missing money. But anyway, like I told you, at age 50, he said he was going to retire. It was his birthday. I'm not sure if that was the actual. I think that was actually his actual day. If not, it was the day before the day. Well, that was his birthday. He said he was going to retire. I knew he would never retire. But anyway, the other security officers were going fishing or something. Like I said, Lloyd didn't have a car, and they were taking him fishing. And I heard that he was really excited about going fishing. So they picked him up. He lived on the campus there at Research Medical Center in a nice apartment, that the hospital owned and would rent out to some people. Nursing students and nurses and things like that. So they rented out to him. So that was great for him. Anyway, they picked him up on his 50th birthday, and they said, is everything okay, Lloyd? And he said, I'm having some chest pain. And they said, we're going to take you to the emergency room. He said, no, I want to go fishing. They said, no, Lloyd, we're taking you to the emergency room. So they drove him over there. He went in. Then they had to go and park their car. When they came in, Lloyd wasn't in the emergency room. And they sent him to I'm not sure if it was a heart cath lab or if they sent him up. But anyway, he wasn't in the emergency room. And then the guys went to where he was supposed to be, and then they were informed that he had died, on his 50th birthday. So I guess he did retire. They had a service for him in the research medical, which was real small. It was even smaller than Trinity's, but it was a chapel. So anyway, they called down and said, I'm not sure if they actually called me or if they called to the hospital, the security officers. Can't remember. But anyway, I went to the director of security and I said, they're having a service for Lloyd at Research Medical Center, so I'm going to time out and go to it. He says, no, don't time out. And I said, nope, I'll time out and go. And now he didn't go, and nobody else went from, out there for it. I was the only one that showed up. Of course, the security officers there, who went for his service. Well, it looks like everything is working okay as far as I can tell. I think this is going to be better when I get those ties. That's, what do you call that, where people go, what was that movie, As Good as It Gets or something or other, where the guy had that disorder where he washed his hands, with scalding hot water and new bar of soap every time he, more than once, a piece of soap each, new bar every time, just when he was doing the one washing. Anyway, whatever that guy had, I think I might have. Not about everything. Look, I got ice cream on my shirt, I don't know if you can see it or not, and stuff like that, but about some stuff. Cables are one of them, and I'm sure there's other things. So, guess that's it. Let me know what you think of the new, also, I moved that light that was behind me over here at the end of this table, and I think that light actually, it definitely doesn't hurt. I think it actually helps. So, maybe I'm doing something right for once in my life. Okay, thank you very much for watching.